Like and subscribe for more inspirational stories.
Camillo was only 9 years old, but he already carried on his shoulders the kind of fatigue that many adults have never known. After his parents died in an accident, he ended up in the house of his aunt and uncle, who didn't want him, but accepted him out of convenience. The house was poor, there was little food, and there was no affection. He slept in a corner of the dirt floor, covered by a thin, moldy blanket, listening to his cousin's laughter in the next room. Camillo woke up early to take care of the chickens, clean the pen, and weed the yard, while the others went to school. His aunt and uncle said that studying was a waste of time for those who weren't their legitimate children. What he called "my belongings" fit into a patched sack, a small heart-shaped pebble, a crumpled image of a psalm, and an old bottle cap that he believed was gold. That was what he dreamed about, with his eyes open, while he got his hands dirty with dirt and held back his tears. No one hugged him. No one said goodnight. Only the moon, which came through the crack in the roof, seemed to see him. Sometimes he spoke to it quietly. He said he wanted to go away, that he wanted a place where no one would tell him to be quiet. And, although it seemed like just a child's imagination, it was the only time he didn't feel alone. That afternoon, everything fell apart. Camillo saw a piece of sweet bread on the pantry shelf and couldn't resist, not because he was greedy, but because he was hungry. When Rogelio, his uncle, noticed it was missing, he didn't think twice before accusing the boy. He shouted in the middle of the yard, pushed him, hit him with the handle of the hoe, and even called the neighbors to see the little thief they created. Camillo tried to explain, saying he hadn't taken anything, but no one listened. No one wanted to listen. He received a beating that even the ground seemed to want to hide, and when he fell, with his face covered in blood and dust, he heard something he will never forget. "It would have been better to have died with your parents." That night, with his body aching and his heart in pieces, Camillo decided to run away. He waited for everyone to fall asleep, put on his backpack, and went barefoot through the woods, guided only by the moonlight. He walked without knowing where he was going, afraid of every sound and shadow. After hours, tired, he fell down next to a wire fence and slept right there, with his head resting on his backpack. When he woke up, he smelled baking bread. A gentleman with kind eyes and calloused hands was standing there holding a mug of warm milk. "You don't have to say anything, just come eat." It was the first time anyone had spoken to him with respect. The man's name was Don Silvano. He lived alone on a simple plot of land, with a small vegetable garden in the back and 2 chickens that he treated like people. He spoke little, but listened attentively. Camillo, suspicious at first, gradually gave in. He slept for the first time in a real bed, with clean sheets and a blanket that smelled of soap. He ate fresh beans and flour, without rushing, without shouting. In that respectful silence, Camillo felt something different: security. And it was there on the second night that he told everything: who his uncles were, how they treated him, and the piece of land that his parents had bought before they died. Don Silvano listened to everything with a frown. He asked to see Camillo's bag, examined the lid, the stone and the print with care. Then he went to a trunk and took out an old folder. Inside were land documents that he had kept for a deceased neighbor, Camillo's father. He read them calmly, turned the page, and there it was: a clause of direct inheritance in the event of the death of the owners. Camillo, at 9 years old, was the only legitimate heir to that land. The same land where his uncles lived, where he was treated like a burden. Silvano closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and said firmly, "That will change now." The next morning, Don Silvano put on the cleanest clothes he had, grabbed the documents, and took Camillo with him to the town police station. On the way, the boy was shaking, not from the cold, but from fear of being sent back. Silvano held his hand firmly, as if to say, "I'm with you." When he got there, he asked for an audience with the police station, gathered the papers, and calmly presented everything. He showed the records, Camilo's father's signature, and the forgotten clause that stated, in black and white, that the land belonged to the boy. The room fell silent. The previously indifferent eyes now sought confirmation on the paper. They called his uncles. They came in nervous, trying to change the story, saying that they had raised Camilo out of pity. But then a neighbor, who had been nearby on the day of the corn accusation, asked to speak. Trembling, she said that she had seen Rogelio, his uncle, hiding bags in the woods that afternoon. That they had lied to everyone. The mood changed immediately. The police chief stood up, asked for silence, and for the first time, Camilo's voice was heard without interruption. He didn't shout, he didn't accuse, he just spoke with the calm of someone who is tired of suffering. I just wanted a place to plant what is mine. And that was when no one had the courage to doubt him anymore. With the evidence in hand and the neighbor's testimony, the police chief had no choice. He ordered the uncles to leave the property immediately. And right there, on the town's notary's office letterhead, Camilo's name was written as the owner of the land. Don Silvano simply asked for a copy, smiled sideways and said, "Now you have a place to stay." Camilo didn't understand at first. He looked around, expecting someone to contradict him, expecting it to be another cruel joke. But it wasn't. It was real. And when he got out of the truck and returned to the farm, he was greeted by the silence of things. A silence that this time didn't hurt. It was one of belonging. That same day, João, the son of the former foreman of the farm, showed up with a hoe and a bean seedling. He said that his father used to tell stories about Camilo's father, about how he dreamed of seeing his son grow up on that land. Other residents approached timidly, with bags of seeds, old tools, and willingness. It wasn't charity, it was repair. Camilo walked around the house, touched the walls, and saw the room where he used to sleep on straw, now empty. In the kitchen, he opened the window and let the wind in. For the first time, he could breathe without fear of being chased away. For the first time, that land was his. Camilo started slowly. He woke up when the rooster crowed, swept the yard, and watered the seedlings that João had helped plant. At first, everything seemed too big. The house, the yard, even the silence. But little by little, he began to occupy every space. He planted corn, beans, and chives. He built a fence with scraps of wood and got 2 new chickens. Don Silvano came every day with advice, a story, and a warm bread roll. He didn't order or demand, he just followed along. And the boy, who had previously walked with his head down, now looked straight ahead. His body was still small, but his gaze already held the firmness of someone who knew he would never be torn away from there. One day, Camilo took the heart-shaped stone, the bottle cap, and the image of the psalm from his backpack. He buried everything in a corner of the garden and placed a flower on top, not as if he were hiding something, but as if he were planting it. It was his way of saying goodbye to the time of pain. On the wall of the living room, he hung the document with his name on it, a simple piece of paper, but with its weight in gold. When it rained, he would sit on the porch, his bare feet touching the wet mud, smelling the earth that now had his name on it. He no longer needed to ask to stay. He no longer needed to hide. There on that piece of land, he was finally someone. The news spread slowly, like everything else in the countryside. First, the priest said at Mass, "The boy from his parents' land has returned and made his home there." Then the teacher from the municipal school came and asked if he wanted to study. Camilo accepted. He went twice a week, on a bicycle lent by Don Silvano, with only one notebook, but with the attentive gaze of someone who knew the value of each word. In writing class, he wrote about a place where the earth listened and the sky responded. The teacher cried when she read it out loud. "This is not just a story," she said. "It is justice told in a child's handwriting." Over time, more people came to see the farm. not out of curiosity, but out of respect. A group of farmers from the region asked to visit the garden. A local radio station wanted to interview Camilo. He politely declined. He still felt small in the face of so much attention. But he opened the gates. He showed the seeds, the tools, the chickens. He said that everything there had only grown because one day someone believed in him, and that if everyone did that for a child, the world would be a different place. The words were simple, but no one left there the same, because everyone on some level understood that boy had replanted his own life. The first harvest came at the end of summer. The corn was firm, the bean plants were full, and the chickens were laying almost every day. Camilo carefully separated everything, some to sell at the city fair, some to keep, and some to donate. He took the first basket to the church, left it at the foot of the altar with a handwritten note, "For everything I received without asking." Then he prepared another one and went to his teacher's house. She opened the door, surprised, and he simply said, "This is from the farm." It was his way of saying thank you. No speech, no posturing, just action. Because he learned that dignity doesn't make noise, but can be felt from afar. Don Silvano, who now slept in a small room built at the back of the farm, helped with everything. But let Camilo decide. "It's your land, your rhythm," he would say. At night, they would sit together on the porch, drinking weak coffee and saying little. Sometimes Silvano would tell old stories. Other times, they would just listen to the sounds of the animals. On one of those nights, Camilo said, "When I grow up, I want to do to another boy what you did to me." Silvano smiled with his eyes. "Then you've grown up." The phrase hung in the air like a warm breeze. And at that moment, Camilo understood that growing up wasn't about size, but about who we choose to be with the pain we've experienced. The following spring, Camilo decided to open a piece of land to teach what he had learned. It wasn't a school, nor a project. It was just him, a wooden board, a bunch of seeds, and the desire to share. Children from the village began to show up. Some came barefoot, others brought old notebooks. Camilo taught them what he knew: how to prepare the land, the time to harvest, respect for what you plant. But more than that, he taught them that no one is born too small to have a place in the world. It was there on that previously denied piece of land that he saw the growth of what he most wanted to plant: the future. One sunny Saturday, while he was sweeping the entrance to the warehouse where he taught, he heard the sound of a pickup truck. It was the police chief. He got out of the car slowly, hat in hand, and said he had come to see the boy that justice has not forgotten. They talked for a few minutes, and before leaving, the police chief handed him an envelope with the City Hall seal, an official invitation to represent the region at a meeting of small producers. Camilo didn't know what to say. He just hugged Silvano and said softly, "I think the world is coming here now." Camilo went to the meeting. He put on the white shirt that Silvano had sewn and wore a handwritten piece of paper on his chest, pinned with a pin. Sitio Esperanza, Camilo. He spoke little, but listened a lot. He met women who planted in pots, young people who cultivated urban gardens, and men who cared for the land as if it were people. At the end, he was called to the stage to tell his story. He stood still, taking a deep breath. He simply said, "They left me with nothing, but they left me alive, and that was enough for me to start planting again." No one applauded right away. Silence came first, the kind that only forms when the truth breaks through. When he returned to the farm, he found the children waiting, sitting on the ground with seeds in their hands. "It was taking a while," Anna said, smiling, a girl with braids who had been learning from him since the beginning. Camilo smiled back, put the pin in his pocket, and went straight to the garden. The afternoon passed between teachings and laughter. When the sun went down, he walked to the old ipe tree that he had planted with Silvano months before. He sat down next to the trunk, took the metal cap from his pocket, the only one left of the old backpack, and placed it at the base of the tree. There, looking at the clear sky and the calm countryside around him, Camillo closed his eyes and thought of his parents. Not with sadness, but with gratitude. He knew that they would see the boy who survived become the man who sows, and that the ground that once denied him now embraced him, because what is true no one takes away. Not with lies, not with neglect, not with abandonment. Camillo was proof of that. And that night, when he lay in the hammock on the porch with the smell of wet earth and the sound of crickets in the background, he slept lightly, for the first time without fear of tomorrow, because tomorrow, after all, was his.
Like and subscribe for more inspirational stories.